Thank you, Brian. Yeah, just to give you just a real quick background, I've been with Eastman for 31 years, and it's flown by. I've been in the voice space for about 4 years now, and it's just like any other space in IT. It changes so quickly, and you have to be able to pivot and proceed forward. So, wanted to just discuss, part of our journey, at least over the past 4 years, some things that we've implemented and some learnings that we've come across in doing so. So we'll go ahead and get started with this wilderness journey and the challenges. And, right off the bat is, when you start looking to make those changes, you've got to identify the correct path forward. And, some of the things that we seen was, we've got to look at what does our current infrastructure look like, what pieces and parts tie in well with that, what's the pros and cons, what's the cost, all the key things that you normally do. And several years ago, when I first came onto the team, some of the things that we were looking at was, SIP connectivity, Microsoft Teams, and not to mention, some of the auto attendant response groups, different sales groups, and some of the needs that they had there. So another one of the big pieces, of course, is the implementation cost, the time and money. I know when we started looking at going to Teams, we spent a year with the whole journey. First started with the planning, and then into the implementation, and then understanding the underlying infrastructure that we currently had and how we replicate that in Teams, and pieces and parts that didn't work, and how we put in some other solution for that. There was also a lot of research that was done in relation to the cost of whether it be headsets or phones, licenses, SBCs, and then the labor that was behind all that. Another big piece was logistics. We had in order to facilitate getting that labor lined up, we're a global company, so we had to also look at what was the best time frame for when we would do a cutover to, say, Teams. Another piece was the equipment delays. There was quite a bit of that as well. The next piece is the calling scenarios, and I kind of broached on that a minute ago, but understanding your call scenarios. We were a Skype for business shop, so we had to go back through and look at all the various call scenarios, and that would be things like call forwarding, simul rings, auto attendants in conference rooms, and then understanding the license cost of, if we replicate that over in the Teams environment, is it a good fit, and what those costs would be. Another one of the learnings, and I say this about all of our phone carriers, but there's a lot of times they're the devil. And the reason I say that, and we've got great relationships with several of the phone carriers, but I couldn't tell you the number of times they would say, we'll get this in 10 to 15 business days. And then they would have to come back. There would be something on a form that wasn't right, or maybe an address for a set of DIDs that didn't match up with what they had in billing. So it seems like it always got delayed. So when you're dealing with the phone carriers, make sure you pad it with a lot of time, because it will not happen as quickly as they tell you it will. Other things that we learned as far as like in the decision making process is you're gonna make some decisions that's gonna bite you later on. I mean, and it may be things that there was no other way around it. And one of those was the 3-pip decision that we made. We had a lot of polyphones in there, and they worked with the Skype for Business, and they would work with Microsoft Teams, but they had to go through the 3-pip gateway. And we've seen some performance issues with that. So, you're going to make mistakes, but you just got to be able to pivot and remedy those when they occur. Another piece that we try to look at is diversifying our options. And when I say that, what I mean is making sure that you've got multiple technologies. So you don't basically have all your eggs in one basket. We didn't want to put everything that we had in Teams, so We've got some pieces that are still open SIP that are registered directly against the SBCs, and we have pieces that are still on PBXs or on the Edgemark or the ATAs to handle some of that functionality. Another piece that we always look at is higher availability and better resiliency. And one of the ways that we kind of was able to facilitate that, when I first came onto the team, the bulk of our company had, was a lot of PRI connectivity. We did go ahead and migrate to using SIP connectivity. And by doing so, we were able to take advantage of our dual SBC capabilities at each of our remote locations. So if you did have one go down, it automatically would start trying to use the other SBC. It wasn't something that we had when I first came onto the team. If we had a PRI go down, or an SBC go down, we had to move the PRI over to the other SBC. So yeah, there's a lot of learnings here that it's just unbelievable how much change that we've had in the past 4 years and what we've learned out of that. Okay, John, if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And just to give you, kind of an insight into what we've been through just since I've been with the team. There was a lot of stuff that occurred before I got to the team. But when I first got there, there was a Nortel SL100 PBX that we were primarily using for our Kingsport site. We did have it tied to some ribbon 2Ks. You can kind of see we had Link when I first came onto the team, and we still had the PRI connectivity there. That Nortel SL100, when I first came onto the team, we were looking to put in a new PBX. That one, the maintenance was basically null and void by the end of the year when I got there. So we had to look at putting in something to replace that. We had probably around 6,000 to 7,000 users or analog phones still tied to that when I first came onto the team. So we had to try to find something that we could still take advantage of a lot of the infrastructure that was correlated to that SL100, with that being the line cards and the old copper cabling. So we ended up basically going to a C20 environment, or a replacement for that particular PBX. John, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide there. And you can kind of tell it here, the C20 replaced that. As we were doing that, that's when we also addressed, this going to SIP. And SIP bought us a whole lot of extra goodness. It saved us a ton of money. The PRIs are very expensive, just to state it mildly. I think that by going to SIP across the globe, saved us in excess of $1 million. It was a huge cost savings for us, and we really didn't see any, degradation in our call quality. And then we also introduced, more diversity and higher availability, and by doing so. So it was a huge win for us. Said we replaced the PBX. We were able to take advantage of the 2Ks that we already had in place before, so we didn't have to swap out anything there. We also went ahead and upgraded our Microsoft environment to Skype at about the same time, and that worked well for us. That was all on premise, and that was in that 2019 time frame. John, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. About that time frame, we'd already started talking about using Microsoft Teams voice, and we'd been looking at that. And this was, of course, about the time that COVID was kicking off there. We were a huge Microsoft shop anyway, and it had already been deemed that we would stay with Teams. So it just made sense that we kind of go ahead and marry up the voice part of that. So in doing so, we had to make some decisions around that. And part of that was, do we use Microsoft's PSTN? Do we stay with, the Verizon as our PSTN? And, part of the things that we looked at was, what's it going to cost us? And if you went the Microsoft route, you ended up paying for, each individual instance, and the cost added up very quickly. By using direct routing and continuing our partnership with Verizon, it saved us a lot of money. It made sense. We can continue to use the SBCs that we had in place. We did have to re-architect a little bit to make sure that we safeguard ourselves with security concerns and everything by basically having a public-facing NIC or our IP address there with the Teams interface. But we were able to pull that off, save ourselves a lot of money, and be able to move forward and marry up that productivity Teams client, everything in a one-stop shop. That's not to say that we didn't leave quite a bit of stuff in place to help with that, basically that diversity footprint. So part of what we looked at when we were going away from the Skype for Business was a lot of the common area phones that are out in our manufacturing areas. We felt like that we could facilitate that by using the open SIP registration on the 2Ks and save a lot of money and make it a little bit more resilient than having to route everything out through Microsoft. We did continue to leave our PBX footprint there. That is one thing that we're still, we've got a huge project right now to continue to shrink that down. The current PBX we got in there is an enterprise class grade PBX. So yeah, we're looking to shrink that down. We will still leave a small analog footprint just to facilitate like some of the elevators, different emergency control rooms and stuff like that. In case there is a power outage, we can continue to provide power for that PBX. But yeah, just several of the things that you got to think about when you're moving forward and trying to adjust to the different needs for the voice space. Okay, John, if you want to go to the next one. This is a diagram. The one before was our Kingsport footprint. This is a good diagram for the rest of the remote locations that we have in North America and Latin America. And what we ended up doing there, we were able to continue to use the SBCs that we had at these remote locations, but being able to integrate those with Teams, we ended up standing up some proxy SBCs, and we basically used two Equinix data centers, one in Chicago and one in Ashburn. And yeah, we were able to put those proxy SBCs in there and then link them to our downstreams and meet the security requirements that were necessary, and able to pull off taking all these sites to Teams. And it took us, I guess, once we got everything planned out and had all the information together, probably about 5 or 6 months to roll our entire company to Teams. And that was, basically looking at a site at a time. One of the things that we would always do is make sure with the site they didn't have any kind of, maintenance or anything going on, but we would facilitate doing that primarily at nights or on weekends. Part of what we found with migrating that within Microsoft was it would take about 3, and we always joked about this, 3 to 36 hours once we would do the migration, basically setting that account up to use the Teams account. It was definitely a learning experience, but yeah, we were able to pull that off and get the whole, the entire company over to Teams and still take advantage of using, the ribbon gateways that we've grown accustomed to and we've been using for, like I said, since I've been on the team, but that was actually before that. I think when we first started doing OCS many years ago, that's when they brought the ribbon SBCs into play. Okay, John, if you want to go to the next one. So key components of the journey. Like I said, I mentioned ribbon, and I have to give a good plug to them because we've had them in the mix. They've done a great job for us. The hardware's been great. If you ever been on ribbon SBCs versus some of the others, to me, it makes a whole lot more sense. I love the way they've got the graphical interface there. Um, they've been good for us, and we've been able to take advantage of using them all this time, which is kind of phenomenal, because as much as technology changes, a lot of times you're forced to have to go to another solution or another vendor. So that's been really good, that we've been able to take advantage of that all this time. Uh, we also have some, well, we had some tenors, or I think they were Quantum tenors. That was one of those things that we could no longer get support for, so we have had to swap those out, and we've used the edge marks via ribbon there, and those have worked really well. Another part of the journey was the Microsoft relationship there, and we're, like I said, we're a huge Microsoft SAP shop. So Microsoft did step up to the plate and help us when we had different pieces and parts of our journey to going to Teams and Teams Voice. Of course, and everybody's got the hybrid cloud play now, so everybody's wanting to make sure that they're, like I said, not have all your eggs in one basket. You can't leave everything on premise, but you can't move everything to the cloud either. That was something I'd heard of, several years ago. We're going to move everything to the cloud. Well, it's just not feasible. But getting that hybrid footprint, that's very much doable, and it makes you much more agile, and can help with cost as well. But in all of this, I hate to boil it down to just 5 or 6 slides, because there was a huge amount of work that's went in this journey. A lot of caffeine late nights, and a lot of really good analysts on the voice team. I think at the height of our team's migration, we had about 6 or 7 analysts that were a part of the team. I think we're down to about 4 or 5 now, but and that was just because we were able to get over the hurdle of getting migrated there. But there's, like I said, it's a huge undertaking, but it's very doable.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. This is really, really interesting seeing all the different parts of this journey. It really, really is fascinating.